start the session today. So yesterday we are discussing about SLD, and we stopped once we could able to connect both the system catalog and software catalog to ESR and ID. Any questions up to this point, or can I jump into the next session, next agenda, whatever we need to see?
Yeah, I think you can go ahead.
Today we are trying to see the next component, that is ESR. ESR is our next component. ESR is now mainly used for storing defining the messages and doing the translation of the messages. So objective is to define and translate the message. And before going there, let me try to do this too. So whenever we are trying to create any scenario, we try to start from a simple pictorial representation of it. Always it's something like this. So sender is trying to send message to PI, and PI is trying to send the message to the receiver. This will be our block diagram always. Let me see the question. Sorry. This is sender. PI and receive. Okay, so this will be our block diagram always. So we will try to understand whatever type of integration is there, we will try to understand from this diagram and try to configure things. Okay, always whatever message that is whatever system that is sending the message is always a sender to us, and whatever message we are trying to send from PI, that is called receiver always. So in ESR, we will try to define how these messages need to be, how these messages need to be there, right? So what does that mean is, what type of message does sender is trying to send to receiver? This is what we will try to understand. What is my sender message type and what is my receiver message type, and how I am trying to convert the sender message to the receiver message. Steps. Import software component version and create namespace. Once we create a namespace, then we need to create data types for both create data types. We can say TT create message type empty, create service interfaces SI, create message mapping MM, finally create operation mapping OM. All these three things one second guys. Seems like my remote desktop got taken off for checking the FTP connection. Just give it a while. Just give us a second. Yeah, Mohan, I'm on mute actually. So I think our basis team had taken my access for connecting to remote desktop.
Yeah, actually, so they are just, checking the OTP part.
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
the
That's fine.
FTP part.
I'm
So,
on just on mute and holding the class.
oh, okay. Just
Okay,
give me 2 minutes, it will be done. Yeah.
sure. All right, guys, let's back up. So these are the different steps that we need to go ahead, like import a software component version, create a namespace, and then create a data type, message type, service interface, message mapping, and operational mapping. Only thing is data type, message type, and service interface need to be created for both sender and receiver. Okay, so we can take a simple example. So what is the software component version we are working on? Ariba, right? So Ariba is the software component. We can take a simple example, um, like let's say Ariba. Let's say Ariba is our sender, and it is trying to send some procurement information to some vendor. Okay, so we can take the message type something like this. Let's say it's purchasing some laptop, or let's say procure and PID. Vendor, let's say some vendor. Okay, and items, item ID, item ID, item name, let's say laptop, if you want we can say some configuration too. Config, let's say i5, and let's close items, and let's close Ariba also. I'm not sure if you guys are already aware about XML documents, right? So XML is pretty simple, straightforward. It will be used for exchange of data between the two systems, and PI always talks in XML itself. Okay, so PI understands XML only, and it talks in XML. Nowadays we are trying to nowadays we can see PI could able to access JSON formats also. We can talk about it later. For now, mostly whatever it's there, that's mostly an XML data that can be accessible in PI. So I have a sender which will try to send. I have a sender called Ariba. It's our own system. It's our procurement system. In that procurement system, let's say I am trying to procure one laptop by selecting a specific vendor. So whenever I click a submit by just giving the laptop information and just click on submit, then one XML document can be prepared from that application, Ariba application, and that will be sent to our receiver system. Okay. Let's see the receiver, how a receiver should receive it. So we can configure the receiver also similarly. Let's say our receiver is let's say our receiver is some Dell is our vendor, right? So it tries to understand, it can have its own format of accepting the message, right? So I'm trying to send a message with an Ariba procure that might try to receive using a Dell related message type, however it might be. Let's say for that it's an sales order. For Dell, it's a sales order, and they want to generate its specific ID for it. Sales order, they generate that as a sales order ID, and let's say for customer, or let's not say customer, let's say vendor itself. We are taking 456 as vendor, or let's say this, right? Customer, and that, let's say it's a different ID. Okay, and we have items here. Let's see here, line items, line item, let's say line item, simple, and ID is 645, name as laptop, um, generation, I say i5, okay, something like this, right? So I have Dell sales order, and SID will be, and mapping will also be given by your functional consultants. Hope you already aware about how the things goes. But let's see how the technical implementation of it. Later stages we can think about how the business usage is. Okay. So now I'm trying to map my PID to SID, and vendor will be coming from Ariba system, the sender application. But my receiver doesn't require the vendor ID. It need the ID of the application itself. So let's say 789 is the Ariba application, which can be hard coded. Okay. Similarly, line items, I have ID, which is nothing but the item ID. Laptop is the name, item name. Generation is nothing but the configuration. Okay. This is how the messages looks like. Now, using ESR, we can try to configure these messages or define these messages and translate this Ariba procure message to Dell sales order message. Let's see how we can do it. In order to do it, firstly, we need to get into the ESR. So in order to get into the ESR again, we need to get into the this Java stack. Right, in this, if you go with the ESB, enterprise service builder, if you click on that, it will automatically open you this particular ESB stack for you. Under this you have your software component, which we already imported yesterday. So let me create, as a first step, I'll create a namespace. One second, HTTP, will go with HTTP or this one. Yeah, let's go with HTTP itself. Learn my IT slash let's say procure slash Dell. So, oh, I should have specified F to F. Just for our case, I'll specify F to F also, like file to file. So the first scenario we are trying to execute today is a file to file scenario. Okay. on that scenario, in that namespace, we can try to go with new and go to this interface objects and click on data type. So data type Ariba procure. This is my data type name. Once you create on that, click on the data type create, it gives a nice user interface for you to define your uh, XML. So here you can start designing your XML, right? So Ariba, if you see the document once again, right? Ariba procure and PID is 1234. Right? So the format is something like this: Ariba procure, PID, vendor, items, and as sub item as sub elements to items, we have item ID, item name, and config. Right. So let's see. First one is PID. Once we have PID, then we have vendor, and then I have items or items, and as a sub element to items. So you need to, once you select items, then if you click here and say sub element, so it generates a tree structure for items, and for item you can add your sub elements. So again, if you click on item ID, you can in parallel add the item name here, right? So item name and item ID are parallel things. But if you want to add a sub element from for this like this, then you can still click on that and say sub element to that. So it will create something like this. Okay. So I can move that something like this here also and say now config. Rather than only defining the fields, we can assign the types of the fields. So whether PID is a string or integer, whether vendor is a string or integer, everything can be assigned here. Right, so just click here and assign string. I'm just making them as strings for now. Okay, and I'm not, we'll talk about this occurrences and all the other things later. So let's try to implement a simple scenario in the first hit, right? So such a way I could able to create my sender data type. Similarly, we need to create our receiver data type. So click on data type again. This will be Dell sales order. Under Dell sales order, insert a sub element, let's say SID. As in parallel element to SID, I have customer, and then I'll have line items. As a sub element to line items, I have ID again, and then as ID I have name, and after name I have generation, right? Again, you can assign strings to these fields also. So just click on XSD types and assign the fields like this. Now, once we create the data types, once we are done with the data type creation, then we need to create message types for this. Okay, so right click, new, interface objects, message type, empty. I have just changed the DT to empty, nothing I changed on the message type. So message type is mostly an encapsulation for the data type. Okay, so here what you need to do is you can assign the created data type to the message type. right? So there are two ways you can go. One is F4 help here. Just if you click on this F4 help, you can select what type of what type of data type you want to select here. Just click on save, right? And similarly, you can create the message type for Dell sales order 2. So the other way of doing the things is you can simply drag and drop like this. That also automatically populates for you the message type. Once you create the message type, the next step is service interface. So creation of service interfaces. Service interfaces are also encapsulation for the message types. Okay, so click on new interface objects, service interface. So as I'll say SIAO, SIOA, SI is nothing but service interface, O is outbound, A is asynchronous. So I'll get into the details very soon. For now, let me create it. SIOA, Ariba, Procure. So here we have the category as outbound. So Ariba is our sender system. Whenever we are trying to create a service interface for sender, we need to mention that as outbound category. And the mode of this is asynchronous. So we are only trying to see one flow. We are not expecting any response back from the receiver. So that's called asynchronous flow. Okay, so I'm just keeping the mode as asynchronous and the category as outbound, and I can assign the message type to the service interface like this. All right, similarly, let me create the service interface for the receiver. So the receiver will be SIIA. SI is service interface. The next I is called inbound. A is asynchronous. Okay. Dell sales order. So now you need to change the category to inbound because this is a receiver interface. So if it is a sender interface, it's outbound. If it is a receiver interface, it is inbound. Okay, and mode still lies as asynchronous, and you can try to assign the message type here directly. Once we finish with the service interface, we are done with the basic message definitions that we are trying to look for the integrations, right? Firstly, we created the data types, then assigned them to the message types, then assigned again the message types to the service interfaces. Once we are done with that, then we can create mappings. The next first mapping we need to create is a message mapping from Ariba Procure to Dell sales, right? Ariba Procure to Dell sales. Your sender, the mapping looks like this. Typically the mapping screen looks like this. Here you will have the source message, and here you will have the target message. So source message is your Ariba, right? You can actually drag and drop like this, or you can go to the F4 help and try to select your this this gets stuck. Why? Seems like I lost the connection. Just let's hold a minute. Mohan, seems like we lost the connection to the remote desktop.
Oh, please reconnect it, no?
I tried to reconnect it, but again,
Oh, I think your system was stuck, is it? And I could see only the pop-up it is saying reconnecting.
yeah, that's what I cancel. Of course, I'm in hold. I'm trying to reconnect it again, but this is the
What is that? Let me.
let me try once again if something came up. No, 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 no. Mohan, it might take time. We'll try to reschedule tomorrow then.
No, actually, I'm with the basic guys only, So as there's an issue with FTP, they've been working, so on the issue from last 15 minutes. Maybe they've done something, for that. So all of a sudden we lost it. So working on it. So I'll just keep you posted in 2 minutes. I'm just, talking to them.
All right. Okay.
So,